Well, Alan Shapiro was a professor of mine in college. That was the first writing class I ever took at UNC Chapel Hill. And that's kind of how I got into writing poetry. I had made a lot of songs, like from the time I was in like middle school and high school, working with this little 4-track tape recorder and recording all the sloppy parts and then writing words and singing those, even though I didn't know how to carry a tune then. But and I'd had like a little flirtation with trying to rap, and that was my interest in verbal play at that point. I was a bio major in college and took Alan's class on a lark to fulfill an English requirement, and he's just like quoting poetry at length from memory and extremely animated. He's got a compendium of jokes in his head as well as poems, and that's a big part of his lecture style, and just really Socratically engaging, and so that got me hooked. Just a lot of, his personality even, and the way that he talked about poems and the meaning that I saw it gave his life. But music is definitely like a big part of that impulse for me, and I started out like my interest in wordplay was, and still kind of continues to be, like first Wu-Tang album is a lot of my lyricism right there, particularly Ghostface, like the texture of sound verging on nonsense that he's able to pull off, but it's still narrative. So that's a lot of what brings me to the page, and that was a lot of my early practice, was learning. I learned scansion. I remember writing like a 20-page paper on Milton's prosody for an English class, and they're like, this is not, like, talk about themes or something, dude, so that's something that I haven't written strict formal verse in a very long time, but that definitely has shaped and is like deep in my body in terms of lyricism. You're saying that tension between, I think that's part of why I'm drawn to sound and like the kind of the bliss of music. Like a lot of subject matter is pretty narrative and pretty based in my own experience. Always trying to look outward. Like I get a lot from some of the things I find most inspiring for writing work, or like the writers I've met over the years, being in writing programs and residencies like this, or just meeting people at parties, poetry readings in Brooklyn and stuff. We're talking about tension between a high register of language or a lyrical awareness that's in conversation with the tradition, and just like the ugly music of our lives, right? I can often, especially out of a grad program, just working full-time and writing poems more or less for myself, I can tend to really hide on the page and be content with hiding, which I think a lot of people do, and because especially the particulars of your life that you share with other people's, there are parts of my experience that are completely my own, but that's very little, So a lot of the stories I tell that have to do with my family. It's like part of that is lived and experienced by me, but some of it is their story as well. So the lyrical eye, the way it's been expressed in a lot of my poems, is like real quiet, real, hiding behind the dry cleaning in the closet. And I've started leaning further into that narrative again since I've been here, especially with the gift of time that we have on our hands to sit with the experiences that inform our work. Greece. Last time I saw my little brother, we were eating fried chicken in Brooklyn, and he was enjoying it like anyone would who'd been homeless a good while and hadn't had a decent meal. And we were getting looks from the couple next to us, and they stared like he was skinning a live animal and tossing bits of flesh into the air and snapping them up like a wolf. He loved it. relished his self-possession with a licked fingertip, adjusted his hat, and softly added, almost under his breath, "That's good as hell," with just the slightest glance in their direction and a smile too warm to be a smirk, but with a hint of "if you fucking knew," with a worldliness known only to a body long past its allotted measure of hurt and pleasure, so it's burning up another unformed souls as it spits down on us from the rafters. It's called All Night. It's about a diner. A diner was at the top of the list of what inspires me when I read that question. Diners, like strange night public places in general. I love this huge matron abusing her skinny cook to whip an egg cream up in the diner on the Scalene Island by the soda plant. She implores through the portable and her thick queens to bring the doggies down here, yeah, and bring their bowls. What I don't need, I don't know. They have real buttery waffles with fake butter. They have fuzzy amber affinities between wallpaper and light bulbs. I've been awake so long now, light weighs my pupils into dowels, bracing me and what I'm looking at. Wash. When I'm out on the floor of the restaurant working and describe the source and flavor of forever roasted pig, I think of my father working on a scaffold in a warehouse room adjacent to the killing floor in another dimension in 1970s Central Florida, where he lifts and lowers himself on the scaffold to hover around the inverted carcass of a cow and skin it with a huge electric knife. He'll come home and my mother will loathe the smell that keeps them fed, and she'll ask him to shower again as if between night shifts it could ever come completely out. Clinch. It's clinch with an I, like it's the term for when boxers hug. I always just called it hugging until I Googled that. The floor through the eggshell mattress, the whole apparatus of the fan humming metal on metal. The protective face shakes against its linchpins. The blades grate on their axle. One of the blades is bent and conjures the wind to voices in the funnel of an ear, swirling as a blur of waving arms and bloodshot eyes, and Eric with his shirt off, the TV on in the background, and everyone surrounding me, and Nikki in the den, insisting we throw punches at each other's heads. Only Nikki can't yet focus his rage because he's younger, how I'm younger than them, and he barrels ahead red-faced and full of tears with his arms wide, while I punch metronomically as he approaches again and again, flailing at angles with his shoulders I don't let close enough for him to land one on the back of the head or hug. The most inspiring thing I feel like for having a good day or writing a poem that day is going on a walk with someone. Something about facing the same direction, being on the same page, meanderingly hashing something out. I find like looses the little stopper in my throat more than anything, just talking. And you know, there's poems, there's prose, there's stuff that inspires you, but it's mainly that being in the world and hearing stories of people I'm interested in, particularly in a place like this, that brings me to the page right now.